My name's Mark Donham. I'm from Brookport, Illinois. I actually live in Polk County. I've lived there for 34 years. In 1980, my wife and I bought some land. We had the Forest Service as our neighbors, the Shawnee National Forest. I got involved in Forest Service issues, and in fact, I filed an administrative appeal of the LBL plan in 2004 with some other people. I read that plan. I've appealed most of the timber sales that have been involved up to that point. Haven't been very successful with the appeals, but I've filed them nonetheless. But I just wanted, I actually worked on national forest issues in various parts of the eastern United States for a number of years, and I thought I would share a little bit of my opinion. The Forest Service is so inconsistent. I mean, who remembers Smokey the Bear? And what was Smokey's slogan? It was, "Only you can prevent forest fires." But now they say, well, we were wrong. Okay, that's a big one. How much money did they spend on promoting Smokey the Bear and putting out fires and now telling us they were wrong? Now, when I first started getting involved in the Shawnee National Forest issue, they were doing a lot of clear cutting on the Shawnee, and it made everybody mad. And 5 counties passed resolutions against clear cutting. There was a big uproar. 24 out of 26 elected representatives of Illinois wrote letters to the Forest Service, and so because of the clear cutting, now the Forest Service said, we clear cut because we want to regenerate oak and hickory, because oak and hickory needs sunlight on the forest floor. Well, what ended up happening was they had been clear cutting also in other places, like on the Hoosier National Forest, and a researcher from the University of Indiana came in and started researching what was coming in on these old clear cuts, and found out that, lo and behold, yeah, there was some oak and hickory coming up, but there was also all this other stuff, everything that everybody was talking about, briars, tulip trees, maples, elm trees. And so if they wanted to have this oak and hickory panacea that they were talking about, they had to spend all this extra money doing what they call timber stand improvement. So it totally blew their predictions out of the water. So then they quit doing that. They went to first group selection and different things. So right there, they had to admit they were wrong. That was a big one because they had clear cut thousands of acres of the oldest timber on the Shawnee, and that can be documented. So the Forest Service used to issue reports called the Timber Sales Reporting Information Service or something. It was called TSPRS was the acronym. Come out every year, and it would be both nationally and on a forest level, how much money they spent and got appropriated to do timber sales and how much money they took in. And it would always show that they lost a lot of money. And usually an Associated Press reporter from Washington, D.C., Scott Sonner, would write a story that would be in the Washington Post that would say, Forest Service loses $145 million on timber sales nationally, or $200 million, or however many million it was. And then the local papers would pick it up, Southern Illinois and Carbondale would write, and the Purdue Sun would file, they'd run stories saying Shawnee National Forest lost $2.5 million. Well, so, the Forest Service's response to that was to quit issuing the reports. No, this is the truth. They no longer issue these reports. You have to do a Freedom of Information request to get this information. And as Davis spoke a while ago, it's not that easy to do Freedom of Information acts. They jack you around a little bit and put you through a bunch of hoops and redact stuff. But they still lose the money because they accommodate the timber companies for the logging roads that it takes, and they say oh, well, we've got other purposes, you know, that that have value, but they never can value them. You know, what are these other purposes, these other benefits, non-cash benefits? That was the term they used to use. We get non-cash benefits from these timber sales. Well, what are they? But when you ask them what was the value of the forest standing as it was before you cut it, they can't tell you. Even though there are researchers now that are starting to actually attempt to put a monetary value, because one gentleman said, a couple of people have said, like, okay, trees take carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and produce oxygen. Okay, that's a benefit. You can actually figure that out and put somewhat of a dollar figure on it. Tree roots filter water that doesn't, then if it goes into a big reservoir, you don't have to dredge for the barge channels, and you don't have to be changing your filters out in your water treatment centers and stuff. So all of that has a benefit. Scenery has a benefit. At this point in time, shade has a benefit. You know, I mean, all these things have benefits, but they don't have a clue on how to value them. And when they do their environmental assessments, environmental impact statements, you never see them try to come up with a figure on what the standing forest before they cut it is worth. So anyway, I just wanted to respond one quickly about when people say, well, we're managing the forest for wildlife. Well, you know, there's hundreds and hundreds of species. And there's an issue called forest fragmentation that the Forest Service is trying to sweep under the rug. Now, the University of Tennessee sent some students, ornithological students down here about 20 years ago. They studied the fragmentation in LBL, and they found that it was very serious impacts on the environment. You don't hear the Forest Service talking about it, but it's like, okay, say this is a block of forest, right, this table, and you get on the edge of it and you start to walk through it. Well, if there's an opening here, you come to an opening, you know, 100 yards. You walk another 100 yards, you come to an opening. But if there's no openings, there's no roads, you can walk half a mile, walk a mile. Well, these big blocks of forest where you walk and you don't ever come to an opening, on the inside of those forest blocks, there's certain species that live, and that's the only place that they live. There are things like black and white warblers, like wood thrush, like red-eyed vireo and scarlet tanager. And those are the places in the center of these blocks of forest where they actually can reproduce successfully without all of the problems that they have on the edges. And you don't hear the wildlife people, they're talking about, when they say wildlife, they're talking about turkey, they're talking about deer. Well, we have a lot of turkey and we have a lot of deer. So anyway, the Forest Service, one last thing, Forest Service is prejudiced and discriminates against people that believe that the forest can take care of itself.
30 minutes. Well, let me see how many more would like, we're going to have to stay a little closer to her, 3 minutes. We've still got, 5, 6, 7, 8 that would like to, 9 that would like to speak. I'm going to start over here with the gentleman in the blue shirt. I am going to ask you to stay close to your 3 minutes, or we're not going to be able to get everybody in. Do the best you can to honor it. You be sexy.
I just take 1 minute. I'm a very boring person, so 1 minute's fine. My website is Bluegrass Woodland. You can see all the boring details there. I'm interested. I'm actually not going to take a position, because I know many of you take a position today, that's fine. I'm very interested, I used to be interested in trees, grasses, wildflowers, etc. I still am. I'm getting interested also in people in the process. I've got 3 very simple suggestions. And I've talked about some, by the way, I've got 20 pages, 21 20 versions of that. Just pass on the front row. I've only got 20 copies, so you're welcome to join it. Field trips. The meeting today is useful to a certain extent. Obviously, it's a little rowdy. It would be so useful to have a monthly public field trip program involving schools, colleges, universities, calm, collected discussion, looking at the forest. I don't think we have that in LBL. We need it around the state of Kentucky. Just people getting out and talking and looking at stuff and learning, connecting it to school programs a lot more in the summer. We need a lot more of that. It would really help working all these issues together. The second point is there's a better way to cut through the detail of all the biology. There's hundreds and thousands of species out there. We don't even mention the mushrooms today. There's many, many, many things out there. But I think we can make it simple by 3 levels, and you can teach it this way in schools. You can say, number 1, we want to protect and conserve the landscape. Big chunk of LBL, we know that. Most of us agree on that. We could even add some buffer, some of the estate parks around the edge. That's a good thing. Then we get into arguments about habitats. Second level is habitats, and that's fine. We can argue about it later, but not today, perhaps. We won't resolve it today. Obviously, some people want to have very little open land. I will be a moderate myself. Some people want to have, a lot of open land. But let's talk about that with some focus. But we need to, and the third level, of course, is the species level, which is endless. And we need to boil it down by saying which of the groups of species that are really important to micromanage. Deer and turkey are doing fine if we manage the habitat. We're not going to micromanage deer and turkey. We are going to put some elk and bison. That's a special effort with a fence. We should be planting some interesting wildflowers and grasses that we're not. I can help detail that. Last thing, we can agree to disagree. And in fact, we have to, because there's no way everyone's going to agree in this thing even in 10 or 100 years. So I would say there's a number of interest groups involved in LBL. We know that. Let's be fair and let people try their thing in different areas. Forest Service, 8,600 acres, oak grass, and whatever they want to call it. Some of us are saying, fine, let's let them do that and study it, but we have to monitor it and evaluate it. We need field trips, get out there, we must look fairly at those areas. It's got to be tied back into a monitoring program so we can all learn together. And say what? Bluegrass woodland, one word, bluegrass woodland. I'm going to put my notes on the website and a lot more down the road. So, .com.
Tonight is one of the greatest nights in the history of the land between the rivers heritage. Can you imagine 50 years later, this many people are still concerned about this land? I'm Dale Dowdy with King's Publishers. Several years ago, we began publishing Between the Rivers, Keep the Promise magazine. We have many editions and hundreds of pages. Del Oliver and David Nichols and many others have put it together. And I can just say one picture that broke my heart, and this is part of why we're here, was during the time the TVA had it, people didn't know exactly where the cemetery was, where they were buried, and couldn't even get to it because there were no roads. They were made roads open, and there's a picture of a man putting a cross at his father's grave. For the first time in 30 years. It has happened. This is a show of concern for people. And so there are many things going on. And it's been a great night, in my opinion, because this is the American at work, and the land between the rivers is what it's about. There's a story also in there about a man who was over here, and they moved him because they had to flood Kentucky Lake, and then they flooded the Barkley Lake, and so when they went to do the land between the land between the lakes, they said, you're a land speculator. And so several people had to move a lot of times, and there is a lot of emotion, and I'm sorry, it's all about the heart, in my opinion.
And then the lady with the red neck, okay?
came here as a concerned citizen. My name is Michael Elliott. I live in Lake Barkley, Terry County. I want to comment, but what I see, there's a lack of communication here. There's a very exponent of whatever. If the Fire Service would have a study, self-imposed study on housing wise, who's and what's and whatnots, will be, have been, and should be, and haven't been, and all this scenario in a blender needs to be separated out so everyone can understand what's going on with this. Failure to communicate is causes more incidents, interruption, and progress. So, meetings and the plans were printed where they could be easily accessed by concerned citizens. That would be a positive. The steering committee, where a person that represents recreation and specific forms of recreation like ATV, boating, hunting, trails, bicycling, etc., etc. Have a meeting maybe quarterly, open to the public, and invite the press so they can get the word out what happened at this meeting, and more people can understand what's going on. Okay? I just wanted to speak what I can. I was raised in Graves County and the value to Shade Creek, so I know about nature and artesian springs and all this and that. So that's my suggestion. And I want, this is a good omen, this meeting, because the elected officials and some other prominent people, I don't know who they are exactly, got this meeting together, which is a good start. So everyone can understand what the plans are going to be, not be blind